Okay, they're gonna give us their perspective and their story about how to get your first job in the industry, right? How they got there. Somebody remind me what the title's called?
An inside look, getting the first coding job.
Thank you. It's like we practiced. Perfect. Okay. So the way that's gonna work is the first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna introduce themselves. You know, so you can point at them and say their name when you want to talk to them, right? They're gonna tell us what they do. Okay. After that, you guys are welcome to raise your hand and ask a question. Otherwise, we have some questions that we can utilize in case you guys are shy, right? Perfect. Now we all understand that this is for networking, right? Perfect. Because when we're done with this talk, I don't want it to be like super silent. That's awkward, guys. Okay, perfect. Okay. So Amy is going to be our moderator, and she'll introduce herself as well. Okay. So you guys can take it away.
Well, sweet. Yes, my name's Amy. I am a web CMS coordinator at Esri and founding member of this group. And I'll be your moderator. So let's have some fun.
Just introduce ourselves.
Yes. So introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Lidia. I'm working for a startup company which is called 11 Health, and I'm a software developer in this company. There is a tech team there, about 10 people. They have in their own roles, and as a first job that I got there as a front-end software developer. So anything that I have is developing web pages. We have several apps. I'm working in four different apps, and most of them like 3 of them are made in Angular, and one of them pretty much is JavaScript. So, which kind of the easiest. Yeah. So I guess we just go with the questions later. I'll just introduce myself. So
Yeah.
I give this
Just a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you work.
continuation to you.
Nice to meet you. And hi, welcome to this event. My name is Menjívar. I work for a company based on Anaheim. I've been working on this company for the last 3 years. We develop, well, it's basically developing business intelligence related modules, different modules based on JavaScript, using React as in the front end, and for the back end we use C#. I've acquired a lot of experience on that, and here I am.
Right. Well, my name is Velazquez. You could also call me Javier. And well, I am a front-end web developer at this company in Chino called L&L Wood Products. And what I help them do is create all their landing pages. This is a company that sells all type of wood products for your home: molding, casing, baseboards, doors, windows, you name it. And they have all these catalogs, PDF catalogs of all these thousands and thousands of items. So now they want to bring all those items and their about pages, and they want to tell that story about those products through web pages, and that's what I'm doing. Right now I'm just working with HTML and Bootstrap classes. We have another developer who does the functionality with JavaScript behind it. I'm still not there yet, but right now I'm ready to tackle on the next project.
Hi, I'm Robin Preibisius. I'm a software developer at Applied Statistics and Management in Temecula, California, and in fact got that job through this very group. I've been working in mostly ASP.NET and C# with a little bit of React on the front end. What the company does is make medical credentialing software that facilitates the process between medical providers and medical facilities that hire them. And so I have done a little bit of each front end and back end. I've done some working on the APIs. I've done some cleaning up and working on the UI and enjoyed both. So yeah, that's where I am right now. I've only been there for about 5 months and really enjoying it so far.
Felipe Fernandez. I'm a front-end developer. Wait, I have hands up there. I'm a front-end developer at Esri. So they're one of the pioneers in mapping intelligence. And what I do is I try to make them look good. I turn logic into energy. That's what a front-end developer does. And yeah, and entice people to know about their products and buy their products. That's it.
Sweet. So does anyone have any burning questions they want to ask right now? Yes.
How long did it take from application process to actually got the job? How long did it take you guys to get hired on?
Good question.
I think it's really individual for everybody, so I'll just start with myself and we'll go again, like one by one. In my case, I'm a bootcamp graduate, so it took about 7 months just to prepare and switch. Well, let's start with the background. First, I was a customer service just worker, and it didn't relate to any software, and I had to make this decision. If I want to do something else in my life, I have to pick what I want to do. And a couple of my friends, they software developers, and they recommended to go get a course, just one course, to see if I like any HTML or CSS and how I go with that, and if I like it, then probably I can make the decision to learn some of coding. And once I done that, I decided to go to the bootcamp, and it took 6 and 7 months. After that, after when we graduated, we had already resumes ready. We had our LinkedIn pages ready. We had our social website, like, if you on Twitter, a follower of different software developers, then you're also ready there to interact with them and communicate if there are any possibilities, opportunities to find job or internship, or even just an opportunity to work together on some project. So that's part of it. When we graduated, we already were there to go and show ourselves. In my case, now I go to my case. In my case, I just, I think network is the played a major part how I got my job. Because one of my friends, she was a software developer, and it turned out that in their company, they just decided to open a new position for, like, as an entry job or as a software developer, and they were looking for someone to fill this position. And I was just at the right time and at the right place. She was there, she told me, okay, you gotta do it right away, send them resume, and I did it. And it took about a couple of weeks for them to think, but then they invited me for the interview, and after interview, it took about another 2 weeks for them to make a decision that they want to hire me. So I would say it was fast. For me, it was fast, because
fast.
after graduating, I got a job within 1 month.
Very fast.
Hi guys. Well, I can relate in a phrase that she mentioned. I was there at the right time, at the right moment. A little bit of background. Well, I studied a technical degree in my country. I am from El Salvador. When I moved here, I was expecting getting the degree, the bachelor's degree for for computer science. But you know that when you have just moved, you have to find a job and you have to make a living. So I did that, and I went to this company. I entered as a clerk there, and as I was at the right time, they opened a position for software development, junior software development. So I applied, and I passed through the interview. They made me test on how my knowledge was at that moment. It was very, very basic. I remember I just had what I learned from my technical degree, and they accepted me. They hired me as a software developer at that moment. And from that, I will say that it was fast. As I was already in, I had some opportunity to show my personal abilities, my skills, my soft skills. So they like me, and then they give me the opportunity to do what I like, which was software.
All right. So my whole journey started. It was around December of 2017, where I had already finished my degree 2 years ago as my computer systems, a bachelor in computer systems, and I was just working as a help desk. I was actually aiming to go for like getting my CompTIA and go for like networking or IT person. But I soon realized that I didn't really like that job. It was very repetitive. And after the 2 years after I graduated, I moved from Mexico to the US. And here I also got a configuration technician position. And then that December of 2017, I was scrolling up and I saw an ad from Udacity for to enter a sponsorship, a scholarship for a course. Usually they charge like $200 a month. They had a challenge where you participate for 3 months, and if you finish that challenge, then you get a scholarship for 8 months. And once I finished that, it was a front end nano degree. Once I finished that with the help of the founders, these guys, Amy and Joanne, it took me around, I would say, 8 months to actually land my first job. I think I could have done it sooner if I invested more time in actually wanting to find that job. I think I slacked off a lot. I would go on and off. I already had a job, so I was like, I didn't need it because I already had a job. It was helping my dad paint houses. It was in construction. So after a hard day at work, I would just come home, and it was very tiresome. So I wouldn't study that much. So I didn't really. I think I could have made it in a shorter time, but because I was just not hungry enough, and I was just going to interview processes. I think I went around 34 call interviews, around 10 Skype interviews, and around 5 in-person interviews. And the last one, I was already tired. All these interviews, all these exceptions. Once I just got a call from a company I didn't even apply for. It was a staffing agency. She just saw my resume through Monster. I think it was either Monster or Indeed. She saw my interview. She called me on a Monday. Hey, we have this position for a junior developer position. And she set up the interview for Tuesday. I went to the interview. It was just the manager. He was a marketing manager who needed a front-end developer to help him with his projects. And after the interview, Wednesday, I got a call. You're hired. You start Thursday.
That's quick.
That's very quick. But after like 8 months of
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the mistakes I also did is because I was already very tired of the interviews. I just told them, you know what, I don't care about the money, just I want to get in there. And because I didn't even think I was going to pass the interviews, I gave them a really low price for my title. And I think that's why they hired me as well. But you know, you have to get your foot inside the door.
So I got my computer science degree in 2003, but due to a lot of factors that didn't work out quite right, I didn't get a dev job right out of college. It was more of a professional service job, and then after that, that didn't work out so well, and so I veered off into another direction entirely. So I actually kind of re-entered the field only maybe a couple of years ago, or re-entered as far as, started studying again. I started looking up some of the web resources and the things that were available for the current technologies. Went through Free Code Camp, which if you haven't checked that out and you're interested in web dev, it's a really awesome one. And it was another case of being in the right place at the right time as far as finding the position, because it was actually a company that is a half hour away from me. I live down in Murrieta, and they happened to be presenting here, so I attended the presentation and put in my resume. It didn't take long at all to get contacted after that for the interview. Had to do a take-home project that was about a week. Did the interview the very next week. It was about 3 or 4 weeks after that I got the call that said, hey, would you like the job? So it was not a terrible process, and I actually hadn't applied to that many companies because I was still in the process of setting up my portfolio and trying to get some more projects under my belt, and of course trying to get a little bit more coding experience. And the opportunity just came up, so it just really worked out after a lot of years of not working out. So all's well that ends well there.
Cool. So I graduated as a computer engineer. But when I graduated, things weren't so good in the economy, so I didn't get hired in my field. I actually got hired as an instrumentation and controls engineer, which was still pretty good, but it wasn't what I studied. It wasn't what I was passionate about. But I worked there in that field for 2 or 3 years, and then I got laid off, and that's where I was debating: do I want to go back into the field? Or do I want to continue, or do I want to do something more into the computer engineering, software engineering field? So there was a phase where I was in between those two. I took my what's called the engineering and training exam test because I wanted to have that on my resume in case I do want to get back into instrumentation controls. But then I completed that, and then I decided to instead go into Free Code Camp. Audacity, Udemy, all the resources out there. And then when I did that, I actually got an internship for 6 months. And then at the end of that internship, I decided to take a boot camp because I wanted to learn more. I was hungry for it. So then I got into the AgReactive boot camp. I completed that, and then maybe a month after, that's when I met Luis, Juan, and Amy, and other people, and Tony, and all of them. Yeah, I could throw your name in there, but yeah. And then we just started building stuff, and then Juan helped me get a position at Esri. He said, but there's no guarantees. You have to do one interview. I was like, all right, cool. So they interviewed me. What was good is that I got interviewed from them before. I did really well in all their interviews. They just me. But the last interview I got was more like a behavioral interview. I think they had the information that I did well in the other interviews, so they just asked me more behavioral questions. So I guess they liked me, so they decided to bring me on. So I would say from the time that I got laid off, from the time I got hired, it was maybe about 2.5 to 3 years. So yeah, so.
So we've got a couple weeks to a couple years. So it does vary, people. So whether you're in the early stages or the long stages of that job finding process, do not give up. It can be the next day that you get your break. So sweet. There was a question in the middle. Yes.
Question I have for you guys is, how do you know whether you should be doing something more on the front end as opposed to doing something on the back end, or vice versa? Kind of what made you figure out I want to do things on the front end as opposed to the back end, that kind of thing?
Well, I think it varies of the person as well. In my position, really, because I got this scholarship, it was a front end nano degree scholarship. So really, I got pushed into that, and I haven't had the time. I'm still learning front end stuff. I'm still learning all this stuff. So I haven't had the time to really dig in to the back end stuff. And so I cannot say I hate the back end because I've never tried it. But that's my side of the story. I haven't had a chance to look into that. I've just started with front end, and I build on front end. I just stuck with front end.
I would say too, in my case, I didn't really have a strong preference either way. I did mostly back end in college, and when I was getting back into it, the JavaScript front-end frameworks were starting to get really big, so I started focusing on them. But either way, I don't really have a big preference either way. I like studying a little bit of both, and as it ended up, I ended up in a job where I could do a little bit of both. So I would have to say that I didn't really have a big preference. I think if you pick a stack that you're focused on and try and pick up at least, the major points in the back end, major points in the front end of that might help you refine a little bit better where your interests are, and it'll help you, even if you're only going to be working on front or back end, it'll at least give you a little better base of knowledge so that you can, if they happen to ask you a question that refers to one or the other, how they interact, you'll have a little bit better understanding of that.
Okay, so so I did full stack because I want to know everything. When I was applying for work, there were a lot of front end positions at that time. So I decided to focus more on the front end, even though I like both. As long as I could apply logic to something, that's where I want to be at. So in my case, since I'm in a front end developer position, I am focusing on front end because that's what they hired me for.
I agree about the full stack thing at the bootcamp. I'm really, really, really thankful to them for that big push that they gave me. Especially, it's very good to have a bootcamp if you have a family and you're very hard to move on, and you have to have someone to do this magical kick, and they're the ones who did it. But the full stack, it's not particularly means that you learn in the back end. It's mostly front end. So if you do the MySQL, yes, it's gonna be like you learn how to build queries and how you basically learn just basic stuff, but you do not really do the back end. So when I tried to go through all of it, I understood that I don't really know that much of the back end in order to work there like as a professional. So it's better just it's again a subjective view, but it's better to start with the front end and be savvy there in order to move on and continue to the back end. And but you might have preferences in cloud development, and you might even join there, and work there. So it really depends on personal interests.
What I have to say here is that when I study and when I learned how to code, I was in that technical degree that I mentioned about 8 years ago. That question was related to technology. For example, I don't know, on the back end is going to be C# or C++, and you know that the front is going to be something with jQuery and HTML, CSS. Now, with these, especially with JavaScript, which you have the full stack tools to work with the same language, I believe it's more than a personal life or personal taste. If you like to be the guy who designs this landing page or this form or this button or this user experience, go for the front-end development side. But if you are more like, I want the request to only have this duration of 0.00 seconds, go for the back. And if you like more modeling and how your entities are going to communicate and work together to present information to the user, go for the back end. So I believe that it's more like a personal taste, but you will be applying logic in both of them. So it's basically the same from the perspective of what you are applying your computer science or your programming knowledge. There's not much.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. All right, I think we had a question in the back.
My name is Yogesh. You can all call me Yoyo. It is very easy to understand. So my question is like, I'm doing my master's and I want some internship experience to complete my master's. I am from India. I am doing my master's in India. I'm here on K1 visa, which is marriage visa. I just got married.
Congratulations.
So when I try to apply and I go on website, they have all description about jobs, even about internship. They want many language that they give so much things, and they tell me about background check. They want social security, or they want proper US citizen. So I am confused there that should I apply for it or I don't, because so many out of 10 there will be 8 jobs internship where I couldn't even apply because I don't have social security. Second of all, they want background check, so I don't know how they will check my background because already immigration process has did that. So there are n numbers of confusion with my case, and I am stuck. I don't know from where should I start, and I just want minimum 3 month to 6 month internship so I could go back and I could have my degree. And this is my question. So if anybody can help me,
So,
thank you.
good question.
So it is a tough one because in order for a company to hire you, most of them they do ask for a social security number and for a background check uh, for an actual dev job. But there is open source out there where you can get more experience through these open source projects. At the end of the panel talk, we can show you how to set up that environment. Uh, so we don't have an actual answer to see how can we solve this issue of how can I get into a dev job but I don't have a social security number. We don't believe we have that answer, but we can assist you and guide you on what path should you take. So when you do get fully married and you do get all the process and you do become a U.S. citizen, so you already have that experience and you can show your employers all that. But it is tough because you do need something. You need paperwork to show your school back at your home that you completed 3 months of community service, you could say. And so it is a tough one.
Well, I agree with his answer because we are entering more like in the law area. But what I can tell you is that probably you should practice your interviewing skills when you're ready to really get the job and apply for it. You will have this sense of how the businesses or the companies here um, make the process of interviewing. There are some platforms that you can go and well, this is for everyone. There are some platforms. There's one that I use personally. In the past, it's called Interviewing.io. So you can have interviews, like not real interviews, but they help you getting more soft skills to get up, to have a really good experience in the interview.
I think Yuan has
So
something to say.
we can talk after the panel talk, but at Esri, I do have colleagues that are on visa from India, so I can connect you with them, and they can probably guide you as to what to do. So, yeah.
And also about you said something about all these skills in a job, if you should apply for them or not. This has already been touched a lot, and thanks to everyone here contributing to the answers. The answer to that would be, as long as you have, there's like 10 skills, as long as you comply with like 7 or 8, I think you should apply. Most of these companies, they like the recruiters, they don't even know what languages you're gonna use. They just like Google what languages do front end need, and they just put that on the job posting.
React years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
additionally, like applying for a job and going through the application process, yes, landing a job would be great. However, getting that experience talking to someone, that's also valuable skills because the more you do it, the more you feel comfortable, the less you get the like I get super shaky and like I start like speaking really quickly to the point where I stop breathing. So doing it more and more times will make it so that you don't actually end up choking in the one job that you might actually want. So, kind of get out there and apply. And, if you don't get it, at the very least, you can ask them for feedback. Like, what did I do that, or like, what did I say? Or like, basically just any feedback that you really can value from that experience. And if you're not going to get the job, then at least you gained something from that interaction. So that would be the little
so
piece
just
of nugget.
read the responsibilities that job listing wants, and just apply and tell them your experience and see where it goes from there. Because if you hold back because you see a language you don't know, that's something you shouldn't do. You should contact them and say, I know this, and this, but I haven't seen this. They're like, oh, sometimes they'll be like, oh, we can teach you that, but you have the other, so we can try you out.
And also just apply, even though if like you're not sure, because sometimes they get back to you in like 3 months, and by the time they get back to you, you're already gonna know your stuff. So just apply, and if they get back to you like the next day, then it'll be really good interviewing experience. Because I know we were just talking a little while ago about they asked you a question something about backholds or something, and then there's some questions that are really weird out there. But it prepares you for those weird questions, and it gives you like I guess emotional experience, because like Amy was saying, like the more interviews you do, the more like you're more relaxed. Because I've done a lot of interviews, and then like by the time I got to like my 20th interview, I was like, okay, yeah, just ask me the question. Like, oh, what's my like greatest strength or like my weakest weakness or whatever? Like, yeah, I know the answer already. Like, I mean, after each interview, I would write the questions they would ask me and then like answer them. So like the next interview, it's probably gonna be like very similar questions. So yeah, you just get more like experience.
So that is a good segue. Do you guys have any knowledge or just advice on interview questions, or like, let's start with, what was the hardest interview question that you like gave you like a panic attack, so to speak?
Well, I can give them an advice that really worked in my case. It's from the boot camp. We have like several projects. Basically, we had like 3 projects so far, big projects that we worked on, and plus we had those homeworks every week. You have to finish some homework, like a little tiny project. So whatever projects you have, you put it in your portfolio. But okay, you kind of give your portfolio out, but there is no guarantee that they actually gonna look at it.
Yeah.
So when you go to the interview and you're invited, it's the best part. Like in my case, I just bookmarked 3 the most interesting projects that we've done so far, and they were very interesting. I got my laptop, and then the first question, and mostly usually like a lot of people ask, like, tell us about yourself. So some people can go far and say where they live, what they, what's their hobby and stuff. But when you have this kind of open question, just take your chance. You just start like, okay, tell about yourself. I just tell like, okay, I just graduated the boot camp, and guess what? I had like 3 amazing projects I worked on. Do you want to see? And of course, they're like, of course, show where they are. Like, okay, I opened my laptop, and they were all ready. So of course they wanted to know where's your part there, and you do not talk about the whole project. They're not interested. They of course they're gonna be interested in what you've done there. Yeah. So you show exactly what kind of part you've done, and like if it's a chat box, or if it's just some kind of random thing that you've done, it's still, they are very interested. They even might ask you a very detailed question, what particularly you've done there. So I just saw how they like that. You see that in people's eyes. They like that. It's like, okay, what's the next project? Okay, what's there? What you've done there? So it took I would say about 20 minutes. I just was impressed that they were interested. It's not like, oh, okay, you've done that. No, they were interested, and they wanted to know what I've done there. So that's one of the advice I would like to give. It's definitely a good one.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, in my case, she's right. Most of the difficult questions do not relate to tech itself, because I mean, why you are working with some language, they may be working in another. But what I can say is that, for example, when I have had many interviews, and what I usually do is I ask the recruiter that is setting up the interview, and they usually know, well, what is the technology that the people is using. Sometimes they tell me, oh, it's this, and that, and I know them, and sometimes I don't. But it's probably something that I can pick up really quickly, so I start reading about it. And for example, in this job, I didn't know much about C#, but I knew how to code, so that was, I had 50% of what I needed. And so I started reading about C# and how it's different from JavaScript in this perspective, that you have more types, you have more strict code. So when the interviewer started asking me questions, I was, oh yeah, and I read that this and that, and she started to feel that I let her know that I never worked with C# before, like professional, but I knew how to code. So she told me, oh, okay, we can teach you here, as some of the other people mentioned here. So first of all, do not lie when you don't know something. You don't know it. But
Yes,
if
don't lie.
if you can learn it, or if the people from the companies is willing to teach you, well, you have to show them that you are willing to take that opportunity. So that's what I think.
Nice.
I want to add about don't lie. Some people bring, like, I don't know, maybe they have some kind of professional service attached. You know, someone writes resumes for you. So I just have one example. Like, we had one person who wanted to get a job as a Android developer, and this person had a resume of 10 pages, and this person is very young, like was about 20 years old, maybe even younger, I don't know, but 10 pages with all the languages possible, like written there.
Which are possible.
Oh my goodness, this person is smart. But when the first question was like, what kind of Git do you use? And
well,
yeah,
until that, I can say
and
that.
And there was not any answer. You, of course, you kind of see right away if this resume is fake or not. You know?
Yeah, what I can add to that is that if you have only do a hello world in a specific language, do not write that language. You have I mean, for example, I imagine that most of you have come from a bootcamp, and most bootcamp or with JavaScript, so you can pretty well put that because you have been an entire 3 months or 6 months. But if you just went to Google or YouTube and watch this tutorial how to make an application in Python, and they started writing a hello world, do not do it because they will know for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of tough questions out there. Each job depends on the language you're learning. They are required for you to work with. Most of the hard ones I got through my interview process were like, what's the difference between this and that? And they're very similar, but maybe one feature is off. And sometimes, like, you know how to work with it, but you don't know how to explain it, and that's a tough one.
I agree with that. And I would also agree with the toughest ones that at least that stick in my mind were not the tech questions. And I was fortunate that there weren't a lot of really challenging ones because a lot of the tech stuff I did for the interview process was either part of the take-home project or part of the written test after the interview. What stuck out in my mind, I don't know if I would say it was the hardest one, but the one that I still keep going about is there were a couple of questions about UI design. And it was just real simple questions. What's like a really good UI design you've seen? What's a really bad UI design you've seen? You think my brain could come up with anything at the time. So I guess the takeaway from that one is be prepared to think outside the box a little bit when you're preparing, getting all your programming questions ready, programming knowledge ready. Just try to think a little bit wider because think about kind of the big picture. Okay, what else might they want to know? What else might be good knowledge to have, soft skills, etc. That maybe not tied directly into the the tech aspect. I think if I'd have done that, would have probably felt a lot more comfortable at the interview.
I think my hardest question was it was an algorithm question on, it was for a Google interview on an infinitely sized Go board, like manage the state. So I never played Go, so I had to ask him like, what's Go? So they did a little explanation for me. So that kind of tripped me up because like something I wasn't familiar with, and then I just tried to write an algorithm for it. I did all right, I guess, because I had a second interview, but that one was hard. But another one that I thought would be hard was I applied for a position, and I put on my resume that I'm familiar with Python. So they gave me Python algorithm questions. I thought this was gonna be hard, but it was a take-home test. So when I was doing it at home, these like algorithms were really easy, and I'm really good at pseudocoding. So I just wrote pseudocode, and then just Googled some like how to do a Python for loop, and then okay, because all for loops are, I mean, a lot of languages are pretty similar. They have loops, they have if else, they have all these other things, functions. So like, I just Googled everything and just because like I know JavaScript pretty well. I know like how to pseudocode pretty well. So it's just translating from the logic from JavaScript to Python. And I'm familiar with Python, but I'm not like fully experienced. So like I did well in that interview. They liked me. He tried to get back to me, but I already had a job. So.
Thanks,
I mean,
guys.
but admit it, how many times at work do you just go, I don't know, let me Google that?
Yeah, I mean, at work, I do that, yeah, kind of often, yeah. So it's normal if you don't know, yeah. So if you don't know stuff during the interview, it's just to ask your interviewers like, hey, can I Google this real quick? I'm not familiar. And most of the time they'll be pretty cool with it. They're like, yeah, go ahead, no one really knows this. Everyone Googles at work, so.
That usually happens when, for example, there's this method in the standard library and you don't know how many parameters or which are, so you just go, okay, these are the types that I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when they ask technical questions, they're not really looking for you to know everything, because we try, but we don't actually know
We are not
everything.
Google.
But what they are actually looking for are, like, do you give up? When do you give up? Do you try different methods? Like, there's other things that people are looking for other than, like, does this person know his or her stuff? And so that's kind of my 2 cents. You on?
Oh, he raised his hand too, so.
Okay.
So Felipe, I want to tell you that you buried the lead. You should open with, I got an offer from Google and I turned it down. I kind of want to talk more about culture. Like, what's it like? First week, any anecdotes? What's it feel like to be professional?
That's a good question.
Well, I got good people in my company. I'm lucky. So the first week was very laid back. It's not like the first day you have to do this huge project and nothing, no help, nothing, It was pretty much when we have a small company, about 40 people, so pretty much the first day when you go and meet other people and just find out where they are and if you need any help, to whom you have to go to, and then what kind of programs we have, just introduction. It's an introduction, what we have. Even in my tech team, I had to know who does what, who's in charge of a backend, who's in charge of a Apple or, Android, who's in charge of a cloud. So I had to just know, like, if I have questions to whom I have to address them. And then the second day and the third day is pretty much, I got my laptop from the company. So that's where I got all the, downloaded all the installed applications. And then also opened new accounts, it's just all this kind of paperwork done. And then the fourth and the fifth day, that's where my boss decided to sit with me and just to explain all the architecture of each application that we had and where my role is going to be and what I was going to do. And if I had any questions, I had to think over the weekend and the next Monday I had to like pretty much teach said like list all the questions that we have. Like if something is not clear, we're gonna work and go together through all of these questions. So I would say it was pretty good. The first week was pretty good. No stress. That's what I want to point. It was. I think I feel very happy and lucky that I got in this kind of company that does not stress their workers the first week.
Well, I have a similar experience when I started. My boss started to show me the architecture. I started helping her on what and the project she was working on. I started to pick up on some parts of the architecture, some modules that were important and they were interconnected. So I started to understand the relations of the data and everything. And then what I can say here is probably that it was a really hard, I had a hard time at that moment because when I first learned how to code, which was probably 9 years ago, I usually liked to work alone, like code by myself. When I went to home, I started to practice what I learned in the day. So I developed that sole programmer profile, the one who sits in the night and start coding at night with all the lights turned off. And when I get here and got a job and start working and making a living of programming, I understood that was not how you develop products, because products are the result of working as a team, and you have to have that sense of that the product is from the team. It's not that you made that method. The team makes that product. So that's what I can say. That you have to have that sense of we are a team, and if the team doesn't have that sense, it will probably be difficult to work.
So yeah, I think I'm always going to remember like my first week at my job. This was my first job as a front-end web developer. And because of all these interviews, all this time not having a job, I kind of had to put out there that I had more experience than I really had. So when I got there, sat down, set up my environment, and my manager like, all right, here's the work, start working, without any training, without any guidance, not just like. I was just there, and my manager is a marketing manager. He knows a little bit, but not enough like to actually train me all the way. So I was just right there, like kind of panicking, like, oh damn, like 2 hours have passed and I haven't done anything. I'm just staring at the screen. Like I don't know what to do. I thought I knew what to do, but it's a little bit stressful, and you just feel like, why did I even choose this career? Yeah, but after the first week, I started getting the hang of it. I started googling more stuff. Now I knew what to Google because of my job. Like
That's an skill.
Yeah. Now I knew what to learn and all that, and little by little, and like in 2 months, I was already at the peak of where I am right now.
And I would say I had probably pretty similar experience to Lydia's. First I went in, I didn't know quite what to expect. My first job right out of college was in professional services, and it was in a pretty toxic environment. So, when I first went into this one, there were some similarities, privately owned mid-sized company. So I'm sitting here kind of on eggshells, like, okay, what's this going to be like? It was, so laid back. Everybody was super helpful, willing to help me get started. And there were about, 4 or 5 guys helping me set up my machine to get the, to get the main product running on it. And yeah, so I have felt, honestly, I felt pretty comfortable ever since. And I'm not a huge, major like to be around people all the time person. So for I'm sure many of you can relate. So for me to be comfortable in that kind of environment, that's saying something. But yeah, it's like I say, super laid back, super friendly. I've never felt like I was under tons of pressure or that just uncomfortable. So the culture there, I think I got really lucky. And it's been, sometimes kind of like we said, there's times when you'll be just staring at the screen because for whatever reason, you don't have an assignment yet or you're kind of vague on what it is. So, there's a little bit of discomfort there, but that's seriously the only thing that I can come up with that is less than favorable so far. So I've had a very positive experience there.
Culture is pretty cool. Just my first week was more like Luis's. I came in there first day. It's like I know my. You're on camera. Oh, so.
I don't want to show Monday. We're both fired.
It's cool, right? I went in there. It's like I know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Like, come on, bring it on. But then we work in an environment called AEM, which is Adobe Experience Manager. And like that wasn't in the job description, so they helped me set it up, but then I wasn't familiar with this AEM thing, so like things kept breaking, and sometimes because it wasn't configured, like things weren't connected to whatever something in the back end. So because that happened, like kind of a lot in the first week, I was like, is it because like I don't know what I'm doing? Is it like but it wasn't me, but I felt like it was me because like I had to ask a question like I felt like every 20 minutes, probably wasn't every 20 minutes, but I felt like it was every 20 minutes. And like where my desk was, it was a little further away from the rest of the group and kind of in front of the boss's window. So like, I don't want to look bad on my first week. I want to look awesome, but like I felt, I don't know, I felt like I was bugging people that first week, so that kind of carried over for like the next few weeks because man, like I wanted to have that strong start, but like the culture's cool. So
Sweet. Well, we're over time, so I don't know if you want to keep questions or yes. You first in the back. Okay.
Okay. So, do any of you work with African American females in the field?
Not in my team.
I'm a one-man team. My department is my marketing manager, my social media manager, and me.
Until last week, I was the only female on the team. So.
Well, in my team, we have 10 people. I'm only one female. Well, data scientist, I wouldn't say she's kind of in the team, she's kind of, but we don't have African Americans, but we do have like from China and India. My boss is from Israel and all from different countries. So it's like very diverse.
In my case, it's similar. My coworker, the one who sits next to me, is from Spain, and then we have a small team in Mexico, and another. Well, it's like him, a one-person team in China, in Shenzhen. So I got to work with a lot of people from different parts of the world. I have not, at least in our department, there's no female African American.
Like in my work, I haven't worked with any, but at the same time, I feel there's a need for like African American like representation within the technology. So yeah, technology or the companies need to catch up on that. So yeah.
Yeah, and we are in as much as our racial representation is actually pretty good. It's just we only have me and one other young lady on the team as far as female. But yeah, we have I think on the dev team we have 2 African American males. We have Asian. We have a gentleman from Russia. We have I think we have pretty good representation across the spectrum from for being a small team.
If you're new to like coding, what language should you start out with and what?
Like if you want to build a website.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
If you do coding, which language should you start out with and what? Like if you want to build a website or like an app.
If you know how to code, which language is better to start with?
Yeah.
That's a question.
That's the website.
If you're just starting out. But the website, it's just HTML, CSS, JavaScript, like those basics ones that you have to, like if you want a static like website, it's.
What position? Like what kind of?
What's that?
Sorry, job you're going for, or is it like whatever, or just new to coding?
To create a website.
To create a website, so
Yeah,
I would
right.
say JavaScript because JavaScript is big. It's used on the front end and back end. I mean, there's other languages that you use for the back end, but for the front end, it's usually JavaScript. So if you want to learn JavaScript for some free resources like Free Code Camp, I know like a lot of us use that. And then Udemy courses, Udacity courses. So
Free Code Camp's really great too because
Yeah.
it's set up in a really good structure. I don't know if you checked it out before, but the freecodecamp.org. And so they separate it out, like you learn HTML and then you learn CSS and they're all modules. And then they give you projects for you to do at the end. So then you start building with what you learn. And then they move you into JavaScript and then, they walk you through like a whole section there and then give you projects to do and things so you can apply what you learned again. So it's a really nice, well set out structured thing and it's great. So it's a great way for you to kind of get your feet in and see what you do and don't like and kind of get a good sense of what to expect without having to put out anything.
yeah. Also, if you're new to development, we're starting this thing called Spark. Right? Can you say announce that? Okay. So we're doing this thing called
Can we
Spark.
announce that?
I mean, you just did.
This thing we're doing at Spark, that you can learn HTML, CSS, like front end stuff. Before you make that full leap into like boot camp or get really serious about front end full stack development.
And what is front and back end?
I've been talking a lot.
Front is basically, it's obviously oversimplification, but front end is what you see, and the back end is what makes it run.
The engine.
The engine, there you go.
The complicated language, like the parentheses and numbers, like the actual code.
Everything is code.
So with the with the parentheses and like the brackets and braces, that's JavaScript. So that's I guess the logic of it, and then the look of it is HTML and CSS.
So like as they explain, HTML is like a skeleton, right, of a page. CSS makes it all pretty, like fonts and everything, and JavaScript makes it work. If you want functionality, give functionality to the.
You can build an entire website off HTML, and you can build one off of HTML and CSS, and then you can layer in JavaScript. It's just what you want it to do.
In the back. Sorry, the guy in the blue.
I just want to add something.
Yes.
I want to tell him that if you are looking at a calculator where you enter something, that is all HTML, okay? HTML. And the boxes, design and everything, that is CSS. And JavaScript is something where you can validate it and you can use it as a backend where it runs. If you are putting 2 plus 2, that is front end, where you input your number, and in backend it calculate and give you result. If I am right.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yes.
I was wondering, how important are the secondary languages like jQuery or SAS or Less and stuff like that? How important is that to them?
Well, those are SAS and Less are related to CSS. You can call them languages, but basically they are just supersets that you put on top, or in this case, they are compiled with JavaScript in order to generate CSS easier. So for example, you know that in CSS you don't have variables, so Less and SAS helps you add them. And it's easier for you to, think in a programmatically or systematically way your style sheets. For jQuery, that's also the case that it's not a language, but mostly a library. It is just based on JavaScript, and it helps you to code faster. Like, for example, you don't have to worry about, I don't know, making a for loop. You just call a function that you know that you have to pass some things, and it will work. Or it will help you to make your code more prettier, if you want to call it, or organized. And yeah, those are tools, for example, React or all of those frameworks and libraries work that way. The intention is to help you build things faster. And they have their own set of rules, but yeah, you can learn any of them that you want, that you like. They are really important in these days because that's how the JavaScript environment have grown so much, because it is easier to build things on top of them.
I feel that it's important to learn at least one CSS preprocessor like Sass, and then one library like jQuery, because at my work we use Sass, and then we use Lodash. It's also important to know how like the behind the scenes of how that library does its functionality. Like, for example, you said jQuery, right? It's important to know how jQuery creates those like, I guess, helper functionality. So it gives you experience on how to use the library and a preprocessor. It's just that like little bonus you put on your resume, and the little bonus you could say when you're getting an interview.
Well, probably adding a little bit to that is that even though those tools help you or helps you do things faster, you don't have to forget about the basics they are built upon, because jQuery at the end of the day is just JavaScript, and Sass or less, at the end of the day they are going to produce CSS. So that's something that you have to keep an eye on. So I need to know exactly how JavaScript works, especially JavaScript, because I've heard so much complaints about the language when, for example, this the equal operator or the double equal operator. That's the most the most fun complaint that you have. Feature. The feature. So. But if you know why, I had when I was at the university, I had the same for myself, and probably does not apply very much in the environment on the professional environment. I had the saying that it is better to know the why than the how, because with the why you will get to the how. Sometimes because of time constraints, you just know the how because you do it, and that's it. It works. But I personally like to know the why. That's what I can say.
Nice. Awesome. Any other questions? Perfect. Well, thank you.
Why did you answer in a row with them?
Because you stood up.
I think I am getting over like the social anxiety. But die over that. I'm like, why are you looking at me? But yeah, so the panel's over, right?
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. We're gonna have more in the future. I didn't want to say something important, but I forgot. It might have been about SART. Yeah, you beat me to it. Thank you. Was it? So mentorship. I don't want to say. I don't want to give a date because then what happens is but it is coming. It's going to be, if it's not by the beginning of Q2 of this year, it'll be Q3, right? I'll just keep pushing it, right? But it is a program that the city of Riverside, the county of Riverside, they're all aware of. We're going to be getting help from them as well in some way, shape, or form. We have been talking with them about new venues for our events like Hack Day. So there's another building off of Market and University. I believe it's called the culinary something, but it's a beautiful building. Yeah, so Hack Day. For those of you guys that are not aware, we did take a hike in November and December to January. Yeah, you're right. January. So that we can plan ahead.